You know, our minds are pretty incredible, right? We can look out and see a whole forest, but we can also zoom in on a single tree or even the texture of one tiny leaf. So what if we could teach machines to see the world with that same kind of layered, multi-scale intelligence?
Well, that's the central challenge, isn't it? See, today's AI models, they often get stuck. They might get the big picture, the overall scene, but totally miss the critical details. Or they do the opposite. They get lost in the texture without ever understanding the context. They just don't naturally see the forest and the leaves all at once.
But what if we could change that? Check this out. This image here, it just brilliantly breaks down a picture into its most fundamental parts. You've got the original leopard on one side, and then boom, like a prism splitting light, it's broken down into its global pose, its basic shape, and all those fine-grained textures. And that is the core idea here. You have to separate a signal to really understand it.
Okay, so let's formalize this a little. This whole approach, it's all about seeing the world in layers. And it really starts with a simple but super powerful analogy. Seeing the forest, the trees, and the leaves.
So here's how it all maps out. You see that low frequency layer? Think of that as the forest. It's the leopard's overall pose, the big picture. Then you've got the mid-frequency, which is like the trees. That's the actual distinct shape of a leopard. And the high frequency? Well, that's the leaves. All the rich textures of its fur and the sharp edges that really give it detail.
All right, so we've seen the what, but what about the how? To really wrap our heads around this, we need to shift gears a little, move from that visual analogy to the science underneath it all. And that involves a totally new way of thinking about frequency itself.
Yeah, when we say frequency here, we're not just talking about sound waves. This is a much broader idea. Think of it as the speed at which information changes. Like a company's stock price, right? It has a low frequency trend that plays out over years, but it also has these high frequency jumps day to day. So low-frequency signals are the slow, stable parts of the data, and high-frequency signals are all the fast-changing, noisy details.
And here is the really crucial part. The model doesn't just separate these frequencies, it's actually taught to prioritize them. It has really strict rules for that low-frequency, big-picture stuff, forcing it to be super well organized. But it gives the high-frequency details a ton of freedom to vary. It's kind of like building a house, right? You have to get the foundation absolutely perfect before you even think about adding the decorative trim.
And this is where the magic happens. I mean, seriously. Because we've separated these frequencies, we gain this incredible level of control. We can literally take the low-frequency pose from a cat, combine it with the mid-frequency shape of a dog, and then slap on the high-frequency texture from a tiger and compose a completely new, totally coherent image. This isn't just analysis anymore. This is controllable creation.
But as cool as that is, this is way, way more than just a clever image trick. This is a powerful, universal framework that goes far beyond pixels.
It's really easy to look at that wild cat, dog, tiger thing and just think, okay, that's a neat party trick for images. But is that all it is? Or is this whole thing revealing something much more fundamental about how information is actually structured in our world?
The answer is a huge, resounding no. It is not just a trick. This is a fundamental principle for representing pretty much any signal you can think of. These same concepts of low, mid, and high frequency, they apply to language, from the big topic of a document down to individual word choice. They apply to neural signals, financial data, you name it, even climate patterns.
And that's exactly why it's called the Universal Signal Decomposition Framework, or USFD for short. And look, this wasn't just invented in a vacuum. It really stands on the shoulders of giants. It's pulling from classical signal processing, from neuroscience principles about how our own brains process information, and from core concepts in information theory. It's got a really solid foundation.
So, with a foundation that strong, what can this USDF thing actually do? Let's dive into some truly high-stakes, real-world applications that this framework is already unlocking right now. First up, something called Project Encephalon. And just forget passwords, forget fingerprints for a second. This is a real-time security system that uses your unique brain waves, generated by a secret past thought you have in your head, as an unobservable and, get this, fully revocable biometric key. And the performance? It's just staggering. We're talking a 99.7% true acceptance rate with a false acceptance rate of just 0.01%. That is clinical-grade accuracy. It absolutely blows other state-of-the-art methods completely out of the water. So how on earth does it pull this off? Well, right at its core, at what they call Layer 0, is USDF.
It takes the raw, incredibly noisy EEG signals from your brain and decomposes them into these clean, biologically meaningful frequency bands. And that single step, that's the thing that makes this entire multi-layered security system even possible.
Okay, now let's pivot to a completely different world, but one that's just as impactful. We're talking about using this exact same framework to tackle a massive societal problem: governmental corruption. Just look at this table. It maps different kinds of corruption to different signal frequencies. So by analyzing financial data, USDF can spot anomalies at every single scale. That low-frequency band, it can detect systemic bias that's been happening over years. The mid-frequency can zero in on things like bid rigging that happens over months. And that high-frequency band can flag individual fraudulent invoices happening day to day. It gives investigators the whole picture from top to bottom.
So these examples, they really prove we're looking at something much bigger than just a new algorithm. This is more like a whole new paradigm for how machines perceive and understand complex information.
And that's because USDF really gets at a unifying principle of the world. It turns out that pretty much all natural signals, images, audio, text, financial data, they're all inherently multiscale and hierarchical. And by building that principle directly into our models, we start to create AI that understands the world in a way that's much more aligned with reality itself.
So what are the crucial takeaways here? What's the bottom line? First, USDF learns representations that aren't just more powerful, they're more interpretable. We can actually see why it's making a decision. Second, it brilliantly separates the stable core knowledge from all the noisy, fast-changing details. And when you put that all together, you get an AI that's more robust, more controllable, and just way better at handling new situations it's never seen before.
You know, for centuries, we've built instruments like the microscope and the telescope to reveal hidden worlds. Now it feels like we're building a completely new kind of instrument, one that can see the hidden layers and frequencies in any kind of data. And that just leaves us with one big question: what new worlds will it help us discover next?